Hey everyone, today we'll be discussing chemical coordination and integration. This is a chapter from class 11th. This is the last chapter and we'll be discussing all about chemical coordination and integration, the chemicals produced, their functions, the organs that they target, etc. So first let's start by knowing what is chemical coordination and integration. As we all know, coordination means working together. Coordinating together means working together and trying to achieve a specific outcome. For example, if you see how you walk, you can see that your legs or your feet coordinate with each other to achieve the motive of moving forward. So you keep your feet in front of one another and ultimately you're moving forward. So that is your goal. Similarly, here too, we'll be studying about the chemicals that will coordinate and their integration, that is, they're working together to achieve a specific outcome. Here we'll be discussing what are those chemicals, what are they called, they have a specific name which we'll be talking about, and what outcome they try to achieve. The outcome here is actually a healthy, balanced body function. So that is the outcome, and how they coordinate and what actions do they produce. So let us start by understanding why we need chemical coordination and what are the processes. So as we all know, brain is in control of our body, right? And it controls our body by two ways. First one is the very common way, that is the neural coordination. So in neural coordination, what is involved is our nervous tissue. As we know that the brain controls our body through the nerves, and we have nerves running along all our body from the brain to our fingertips. So that's how the brain controls our body. This involves the nervous system. And nervous system we'll study in detail in another chapter, that is central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, etc. And this nervous system has a basic unit of the formation. This is called a neuron or the nerve cell. This is the basic unit. So neurons are connected to each other and they form a it forms like a canal, and here the impulse, this is a and the impulse is generated. So impulse travels through neurons. So impulse is nothing but it's kind of a signal for neurons to carry, and it goes from one organ to the other, and it actually stimulates the function. So this is the impulse. Similarly, we have another way of brain controlling our body. This is the chemical way. So how the neural coordination has happened here, there is also chemical coordination. In chemical coordination, however, endocrine system is involved. Now, endocrine system is a system of glands that are called endocrine glands, which we'll be studying in detail. We'll be studying endocrine glands, we'll be studying about glands, and these endocrine glands communicate with each other through specific chemicals called hormones. Now, these are the chemicals that we were talking about earlier, whose coordination and integration occurs. So, hormones are nothing but chemical messengers. These are produced by the endocrine glands, and these actually signal a function or stimulate a response. And this is also a way by which the endocrine glands communicate with each other. As you can see here, we'll be talking about glands. Glands are nothing but these are the organs that can secrete chemical substances. Now, these chemical substances can be anything. These can be enzymes, these can be antimicrobial agents, these can be hormones. So, we have two types of glands in our body. So, one is the endocrine gland. Now, endocrine glands are nothing but these are what we'll be discussing in detail. But these are ductless glands. That is, these glands do not have any kind of a passage or a duct through which they can release their secretions to the target organ. So what they do is they directly release their secretions into the blood. So blood is the medium of transport for these chemical substances. So the chemical substances that they release are called hormones. Now there is this specific criteria for a chemical substance to be a hormone. First of all, it has to be a chemical messenger. That is, it has to carry a message. Now, what do you mean by carrying a message? That is, whenever it is released and whenever it actually goes to its target organ, it has to generate a response. So it is not, it doesn't go for any reason, without any reason. So it has to generate a response. Now usually this is a physiological response. So whenever it binds to that organ's cell membrane, which we'll be discussing the mechanism of it as well, so it generates a response. It causes some changes in the shapes of the protein and other membranes, which generates a response, and in turn it produces a specific reaction. And another big thing about it is directly poured into the blood. So as I said earlier, it doesn't have a duct to reach the organ. It is directly poured into the blood. It travels through the blood. It binds to the specific organ due to its receptors. Now these specific organs have specific receptors. Now organs, as we know, are made of tissues. Tissues are nothing but a group of cells, right? So these group of cells, this particular cells have cell membrane, right? And this cell membrane, if you can see, it has a specific receptors. So receptor proteins. This is just an example. So these are the receptors, and these have a specific shape. And these hormones too, they have a specific shape. For example, like this, okay. And these this shape is only, it can conform into these two. Like this is this shape can fit into this and not into any other receptor. So for example, if this is, for example, hormone is called the thyroid hormone, and these are the cells on which it has to act. So only on this it can act. So if suppose we have another cell here which has a receptor, like for example like this, and it cannot bind with this receptor. So even if it passes by this, it won't bind here and produce an action. It will come to this and it will bind here. So this is why they are organ, also called organ specific, and they are poured directly into the blood. So they travel through the blood, but they only bind to the organ that they are specified to, and after binding they produce an action. So what are hormones? Hormones are chemical messengers. They carry a message and they are chemicals. So they have a chemical structure, they carry a message, and they are directly poured into a blood. So they are chemical messengers that travel through the medium of blood to the specific organ and produce an action. So these are called hormones. This is the criteria that it has to have, chemical substance has to have become a hormone. Now, not all chemical substances secreted by organs are hormones. Only endocrine glands secrete hormones, and hormones need to have this specific criteria. Now, another type of glands that we have are called exocrine glands. Now, these are nothing but liver, salivary glands, etc. These are the examples. So, liver, as you know, is the largest gland in our body. So, it has something called bile duct. If you have seen in digestion, the liver is something like this, and here, if you can see, there is a duct that travels here, and here we have the gallbladder. So it travels to the duodenum or the small intestine, and here we have gallbladder. So this is the bile duct. Then there is a cystic duct as well. So what this does is it produces bile. The liver produces bile, and this bile passes through the bile duct. As I said, there is a duct here. Instead, in like endocrine glands, we didn't have ducts. So, for example, any secretion was there, the blood would carry it. But here there is a presence of duct. So these are exocrine glands have ducts in them. Then they secrete chemical substances. Now these chemical substances, for example, these are can be called enzymes. So as I said earlier, bile has bile salts, it has pigments as well. So this bile is a secretion of the liver. As I said here, exocrine glands, they have ducts. They secrete chemical substances that are not hormones. So these are enzymes. This one example of them is enzymes. So one of the secretions of exocrine glands is enzymes, in majority. So then we have other things as well that exocrine gland secretes. So as I said here, liver, it secretes bile. So liver is a gland, it has a bile duct, so it's an exocrine gland, and it secretes bile. Now this bile is composed of chemical substances. It has bile salts, it has pigments, bilirubin, biliverdin, it has enzymes for fat digestion. So it is produced into the small intestine. The target site is the small intestine. So it has a duct attaching it. Now these are not released into blood or anything. These are directly transported to the target organ. So it doesn't have hormones here. So whatever is present are chemical substances, but they are not hormones. Now the third type and the final type is the heterocrine or composite glands. Now these are the glands which can function both as endocrine and exocrine glands. For example, pancreas. So again, in the digestive system, we have pancreas. Right, pancreas appear something like this. So they have, so they are like a flower shaped organ, and here there are something called acini in the pancreas. So these acini, and they are also called they are something called islets of Langerhans. So they are something like this. So we have two types of there are two parts in a pancreas, and there is also presence of a duct. This is called the pancreatic duct, which goes into the, which attaches with the bile duct, and it goes to the small intestine. So acini here function as the exocrine part. They secrete enzymes, and these enzymes travel through the pancreatic duct into the small intestine. But there is also another part here called islets of Langerhans. Now these islets of Langerhans function as endocrine part. They secrete insulin and glucagon, which we will discuss in detail, and directly into the blood. So these are the endocrine part. So these are the main heterocrine glands in the body. So here we have three types of glands. So first we discuss about the glands. Glands are nothing but organs that secrete chemical substances. Then we discussed about the types of gland. First glands that we discussed are endocrine glands, which do not have ducts, no ducts, and these secrete chemical substances which are called hormones. So the criteria for a chemical substance to be a hormone is it has to be a chemical messenger. It has to be a chemical that carries a message through the medium of blood, and it has to be organ specific to a specific organ to produce an action. A chemical that carries a message through blood to a specific organ to produce an action. So these are called hormones. Not all chemical substances secreted by glands are hormones. Another type of gland that we studied is the exocrine gland, which has ducts, and these ducts secrete chemical substances which can either be enzymes, or they can be pigments, they can be antimicrobial agents. Then we studied about the heterocrine glands. Heterocrine glands are nothing but these are the glands that can function as endocrine as well as exocrine glands. One example we have is the pancreas. So as I said earlier, the chemical coordination occurs through the endocrine system. The endocrine system consists of endocrine glands, and now we know what are endocrine glands. Endocrine glands are ductless glands, and the way that they communicate with each other is through the hormones. So as I said earlier, hormones are the chemical substances that carry a message through the medium of blood to a specific organ to produce a specific action. So these endocrine glands communicate through the hormones, and they produce a specific function. So this generate a stimuli, or they get stimulated, etc. And we'll be discussing this endocrine system in detail in this chapter. How the stimuli are produced, how hormones are secreted, what functions those hormones perform, and what organs they perform those functions, and so on. Now, the neurons are not similar to endocrine glands. This is just an analogy that I have discussed here. So, to make you understand how the chemical coordination system works and how the neural coordination system works. So, now there is something that I want you to figure out. I want you to tell me what kind of glands are mammary glands. If they are exocrine or endocrine glands or heterocrine glands. What do you think they are? Thank you, everyone.